All right, we have a recording. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Elisa Johnson. I am the president of Dogs on Deployment, the co-founder, and I appreciate everybody coming to join us today. Your participation shows the support to Dogs on Deployment, and I'm hoping to provide some insight as to the organization's activities, and specifically we're going to be focusing on how our organization has experienced some very impactful challenges since the pandemic, and our call to action to our supporters of what it is we really are struggling to facilitate in our organization, and how perhaps our supporters might be rallied to help provide those capacities so that we can continue to be as effective as possible. We'll go ahead and kick this off. So here we are. Our mission, Dogs on Deployment's mission has actually changed within the last year. Our mission was before very specific to military pet owners and giving them peace of mind concerning their pets during their service commitments. But what we realized is that Dogs on Deployment has become a little bit more robust in who we help. So our wording has slightly changed. It is now, our mission is to give America's heroes peace of mind concerning their pets during their service commitments by providing them with the ability to find people and resources able to help them. So now we have this tagline of America's heroes. And then our biggest reason we exist is because in 2000, okay, just one second. I have 6 foster kittens and they're over here in a plastic bag, and I'm gonna go get them really quick. Hey. Oh my God, what are you all doing? Okay, and this is just the fun part when you work with people in the animal industry. We got some 6 kittens over here. Let me go put them away. My apologies. I should have had them put away in the beginning. Okay, so Dogs on Deployment, our mission and our vision. No pet to be relinquished to an animal shelter due to a America Heroes service or financial hardship. So when Dogs on Deployment first existed in 2011, it became evident that there was a problem with animal shelters receiving too many pet relinquishments from military families, and therefore they weren't adopting to military families. This is actually how the problem for me first became an issue. Not only did I have a dog that was I couldn't care for him when I had a service commitment and my husband had a simultaneous deployment, but when we tried to adopt a pet, we actually got denied an adoption application from 3 different rescue groups, all citing the fact that we were in the military, and the fear of pet relinquishment from military members was so high that they would not adopt a pet. So our vision for a future is that no pet is ever needlessly surrendered to an animal shelter facing euthanasia or worse, because they are able to turn to Dogs on Deployment services for help. So America's Heroes, in the past, we primarily only focused on active duty reservists and veterans. However, since the pandemic, especially being a California-based nonprofit where we experience a lot of wildfires out here, we have opened up our boarding services and our financial assistance programs to first responders, including fire, military, police, and first medical care personnel, as well as public and civil servants. And then NATO members. In the past, we have helped some of our allies with pet boarding when they're stationed in the United States. So again, we are an organization founded by military for military. It was myself and my husband that started this organization. This is really important, I want to point out, because as we start to talk about some of the challenges that the organization has experienced, I want to provide a little bit of context to remind people that I was 22 years old when I started Dogs Unemployment, and I was an active duty Marine, and I was a C-130 pilot, and my husband was active duty Navy, and he was a helicopter pilot. And for the first 10 years of the organization, I technically was doing something illegal, and that was running a nonprofit while also being in the service active duty. There is a conflict of interest where military members are not allowed to serve on boards or participate in nonprofit activities. So as you can imagine, that was really challenging for me professionally because I had this organization that was quickly growing. I had a career that didn't support it, and yet the organization was to support the military. So just to give a little personal context of the challenges that originally came with starting Dogs Unemployment, and the way that I was able to grow Dogs Unemployment while still being active duty is we created an amazing group of volunteers. Some of them are still here on this call from the very beginning, like Linda there smiling, and Karen and Jenny, she's also here. So some of you have been with us for many, many years. And if it wasn't for the support of volunteers, this organization would never have been able to grow into what it was. Because of the limitations of the founding members. And so I just want to stop there and say thank you to those that have been with us for so long. So what is it that Dogs Unemployment does? Obviously, we know that we have a national pet foster network where we offer free pet care for military members' pets during their service or hardship. And to date, we have placed 2,863 recorded pets in foster care, because there have been some pets that have been placed through our network that unfortunately, for whatever reason, were not able to be recorded, which is in fact a huge concern and issue for us, because this means that our impact numbers are skewed, but we will get to that a little bit later. Let's see. I wanted to see, okay. Primarily here, though, is this National Pet Foster Network. And the biggest thing about this program is a reminder that in order to make a National Pet Foster Network work, we have to have our website. And if any of you are familiar with companies such as Rover.com or what used to be Dog Vacay or Trusted House Sitters, or any of these kind of you post something and I respond networks, they're very, very expensive to maintain. And Dogs Unemployment, we are very lucky that we have a technology partner, but we still do have an annual cost associated with maintaining our website, especially when you consider that we are hosting military members' personal information, and security is a huge concern for our organization. And those costs associated with it are often not seen as the the warm and fuzzies where you want your donations to go, but without the ability to have our online site as well as the security measures in place, we don't exist. So I just want to point that out, because this presentation is really about focusing on the challenges and bringing to light some of the underlying issues that when our supporters see National Pet Foster Network, they think it's free to use, which means maybe it's free to build or free to maintain, and it is absolutely not. So I just want to point that out as we continue through. Okay, the next thing is our little kitten. Our Rich Setzer Memorial Grant, which used to be called our Pet Chip Financial Assistance Program. This program initiated in about 2000. We started in 2011, and 2013 is when we really officially kicked off this program. And it was done because as Dogs Unemployment grew and started to get more support, I started to receive donations on behalf of Dogs Unemployment's EIN. And I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do with these donations? At the time, we were very, very small, and our connection was done extremely manually. There was no website to support that. And so we started this fund, and the initial purpose of the fund was to help with emergency vet care. Somebody had a dog with needing surgery, and we would help provide financial assistance. To date, between Courtney and I, calling veterinary clinics, calling pet transportation companies, and working with spay-neuter partnerships, we have provided $926,000 in financial assistance. That is no small feat. Thank you so much. It's still kind of mind-boggling that we're on a record to, or on a glide slope to break $1 million here soon. And so this program, we did rename as for our Rich Setzer, who was a volunteer with Dogs in Employment, and I will speak to him later when we talk about our challenges. Here's some of our statistics. This is for the past 5 years. 2019, we're going to be using as our benchmark year. 2019 was our biggest year of growth. That is the year that I was getting out of the service, and I was going to hire an executive director and go fly for the airlines. And this organization was on glide path to really create some effective increase in capacity in order to be more effective at the programs that we had already established, as well as create new programs. We will get into how the pandemic changed course on that, but that is why we're going to use 2019 as our benchmark and compare that to our present year projected numbers in order to see how in the last 5 years things have changed for the organization. And then we'll start to get into why some of those changes had occurred. So our spay and neuter, we had 734 applicants. And $86,000 they're granted. This is a huge partnership with the Spay Neuter Action Project here in San Diego, which I will talk to more. Emergency veterinary care, 76 applicants, $195,000. PCS has been a huge change for us since the pandemic, because airfare costs and transportation costs has on average increased about 36%. So we have been really challenged with our PCS support program. We've had 97 applicants and $229,000 granted to that fund. Another program that we do every year, and this was 100% inspired by Rich Setzer, is our partnership with the Spay Neuter Action Project here in San Diego. Just real briefly, in this year alone, in 2023, we have helped 154 service members receive spay and neuter for their pets. These are all E4 and below, meaning they are making minimum wage, they are junior. Some of them are married to spouses that maybe don't have employment. These are a very underserved low-income population, and thanks to our partnership with SNAP, we provide free spay and neuter to all E4s within the San Diego County, and we are planning to do a new plan of execution next year, which will include 4 spay days in San Diego County, specifically done at the military bases that will offer free spay neuters to E4 and below, as well as vaccinations and microchipping. And we're also hoping to offer some dog training and other resources during these events. And this is a program that, while it's here in San Diego right now, if we are able to grant the proper funding and the hiring support to make this program sustainable, it's something that we would like to roll out into our other major chapters, such as Hampton Roads. Okay, keep clicking the wrong button down here. Okay, so all of these programs really support this emphasis of no pet relinquished to animal shelters. So one of our biggest challenges is connecting with the millions of animal shelters and animal rescues that are in, across the United States. And one of our plans, a planned program, is how do we get a alliance with these rescue organizations such that when anybody comes into an animal shelter to adopt a pet, they are first asked, are you military? And if that answer is yes, there is a certain set of procedures and information that is passed on to that pet owner based on the fact that their experience might be slightly different than a pet adopter that isn't in the military. Additionally, when somebody comes into an animal shelter and says, I want to relinquish my pet, the animal shelter then asks, are you military? And if that answer is yes, again, they're referred to Dogs on Deployment. While you might think that this should just happen automatically, I can assure you it does not. And it requires a program manager constantly engaging with our animal rescue partners to ensure that as they're doing turnover and as their organization grows, that they're continuously including Dogs on Deployment information within their adoption and pet relinquishment procedures. Similarly, veterinary clinics serve a very similar area for us to help advertise. We work with some veterinary clinics. For example, Ethos Veterinary Health is a national vet organization, but they do have 2 hospitals here in San Diego. And one of the big benefits of working with a company like Ethos Vet is that when they have a military member come into their facility for emergency veterinary treatment, they actually do in-kind services along with our grants. So for example, if there is a $1,000 vet bill, the pet owner might be responsible for $500, Dogs on Deployment pays $250, and the vet would then pay $250 towards our approved and eligible pet owners. Again, this is a program that requires a program manager that we presently do not have, and it is not something that is automatically done. So looking into 2024, this is in addition to the animal shelter program, having a veterinary alliance program is something that we're seeking funding and support for. Now, some of you are joining us as our local community coordinators, and we will get into how the pandemic impacted our community chapters, but this is in the past, we have just referred to this as volunteer efforts. Moving forward into 2024, we are considering this our program because our community coordinators are responsible for so much more than just ensuring that we're having fundraising events and whatnot. Our community coordinators are the ones that are making the connections with their local animal shelters, making sure that they have our information. They're the ones going out to the military bases. And when there's a pre-deployment brief, they're the ones offering a presentation to ensure Dogs on Deployment exists. They're the ones that when we have a boarder that is having a problem and might need help with transportation or something to that extent, our community coordinators are the ones that are online. These are volunteers. They are not always able to stick with us as long as we would like them to, because our volunteers have lives and our chapters have the capacity to grow very large. Hampton Roads, for example, huge chapter. San Diego, huge chapter, very large demographics. And so going forward into 2024, we're looking to consider our chapters as now programs, and we will be seeking funding to support the community involvement as a program with hiring costs associated, so that when we say we have a chapter in Hampton Roads or we have a chapter in San Diego, we have a chapter that is rooted in something concrete and not something that we risk losing if that volunteer steps down. With all of that, in 2019, we'll go back to this great year that we had. It really was incredible to see the successes, how they continuously accumulated over the years and manifested themselves in 2019. We saw a 15% increase in pets that we had placed. We had our highest fundraising year of making $410,000 that year. We also had a very good expenditures that year. And so luckily with our net revenue, we were able to float ourselves through the pandemic. Again, we will talk to that later. And we had a 20% surge in border registrations, which was tremendous. We were covered in the national news several times. And overall, we had support from organizations like Tractor Supply Company, PetSmart Charities, as well as some other kind of name brand things. Again, this is all about the change as we hit the pandemic. I also want to give a little bit of professional insight to myself. Not only was I in the military, I did my undergrad in engineering, which is why I love working in charts, apparently. But I got my master's degree at the University of San Diego, Master in Business. I just finished that up. And I realized that an MBA was not enough for me to understand nonprofits. And so I'm actually back at school at the University of San Diego again, getting my master in nonprofit leadership and management. And last week, I actually attended a summit, a nonprofit summit council at University of San Diego, where they discussed how the pandemic has impacted organizations. And I'm not going to lie, like when I first went into that, I kind of sat there, this silent observer of like, oh my gosh, like am I the only one that has seen such challenges since the pandemic? Because we don't always talk about the challenges that we face because we want to pretend or we want to exude the fact that everything is fine. We're still getting numbers, we're still making placements happen, we're still doing our grants, but we're doing it at a lot less capacity. And that's why we're having this call, is to bring light to that. And when I was at this summit, I realized that this is something across the board. And I think that really motivated me to really understand that these are universal challenges because of something outside of our control. And if we can come together as a community to rebuild and refocus, we will be able to get ourselves back to or exceed the successes that we were seeing in 2019. So just some quick numbers here, as you can see by the chart. The biggest thing you see this percent decrease in pet owner registration. That was largely due to the fact that many military deployments and trainings were canceled. And we didn't have people going places that required their boarding. Now, the converse to that is if you look down at the grant applicants, we saw a 119% increase in financial assistance requests to the organization. Specifically, in prior to the pandemic, we were seeing about $400,000 a year requested from Dogs on Deployment, and we were able to fund about $150,000 of that total request. So a really significant dent we were able to do. In 2021, we saw nearly $1 million requested from Dogs on Deployment, and we did not have the financial funding at the time to be able to make a significant dent in that. That is not because we didn't want to, that is because we had a lack of support than we had previously seen and a much larger request from our organization. The most concerning number, though, that I see here, and the one that I really want us to all take away, is the DoD border decrease of 84%. When we think about what's going on in the world today, and we think about our service members, and we recognize that they are sitting on boats right now or getting prepared to be at the ready, we are not ready. Dogs on Deployment does not have an active DoD border base to respond to a crisis. Now, we have 46,000 registered DoD borders in our network, 46,000. Our biggest challenge is getting those DoD borders to actually want to list themselves available. Part of that challenge stems from DoD borders feeling like they're not being utilized when they come to our website. But we have to remember that Dogs on Deployment is a crisis response organization, and we need to be always at the ready. I like to use this analogy that the military has our active duty military, like Dogs in Employment has our active DoD boarders and our active community coordinators, but the military also has a very large ready reserve. And those ready reserves are people that can be activated to respond to quickly moving military commitments across the globe. And that is what Dogs in Employment also needs to concentrate on building. Oh, okay, this one hits hard, and I will try not to cry. Okay, I'm gonna try. This was the biggest loss from the pandemic. Our volunteers were decimated, including losing their own life to the pandemic. Like Rich Setzer, who the Memorial Fund is named after. Across the board through nonprofits, we saw a sharp decline in the ability of people that were able and willing to give their time to nonprofits. People were struggling with their careers and their lives and schools and shutdowns and everything. How could anybody have time to even consider opening up their home to a military pet or donating when they themselves were struggling so hard financially after critical job loss seen across the country? So yes, these things had real impact on Dogs in Employment. We also saw a huge decrease in our ability to have in-person events. We couldn't do on-base presentations anymore, and base housing bases weren't doing virtual invitations for people to come do presentations. And so not only did we not have the ability to host these events, but we also were losing the volunteers to their own struggles. And so all of these activities had a very significant play in our volunteer force, which is where we're really turning to our supporters to try to reinvigorate the urgency of what volunteerism does to a nonprofit, especially Dogs in Employment, and being able to accomplish our mission. Beyond the volunteers, there were operational hurdles. The critical community events that we were doing, for example, Hampton Roads was one of our community chapters that in a single day's fundraising event could raise $15,000. We couldn't do those for a year and a half. And then after that year and a half, our volunteers weren't with us anymore, so we still couldn't do them. There hasn't been a recovery because we haven't been able to have the capacity to get these new volunteers trained. And we have some new faces here. And this is where our efforts right now are trying to change our tide, is bringing on new people into the organization, sharing these very real challenges to motivate people to understand that it is not for a lack of heart. It is a lack of external support for the organization, for our volunteers, for the community to be able to host these events and encourage our networks to be able to support. I also want to point out that myself and Courtney are the only employees of this organization, and it is national, and we have been at capacity. And when we don't have the financial ability to hire additional people, and we have to rely on volunteers that have their own priorities, this is when we start to get into, are threatening our ability to be effective. So all of this contributed to our donations, our revenue from 2019 to 2023 this year. We're seeing about a 50% decrease in revenue, while our expenses have remained fairly consistent. This has been extremely difficult. A lot of this has to do with not just individual giving, but a loss of major corporate sponsors and grant givers. As major companies were facing pandemic challenges, the first thing for them to go was their philanthropic support. So thousands of dollars was lost in the pandemic from sponsorships and employee giving campaigns, as well as grant givers. We also lost Amazon Smile, which was a huge income generator from us. And, you know, I like to point out, we have Jenny Brown, for example, here of Bowser Beer, one of our partners in merchandising, and she experienced huge problems with her logistics and supply chain and ability to make her product that her product provides passive revenue stream from Dogs Unemployment. We have two other partnerships with Upcountry Inc. and Lazy Dog Cookie Company that experienced the same types of challenges, all resulting in this lack of or this reduction in our revenue. I have some pictures here of some of our great Hampton Roads activities going forward, because I like to remind myself and our volunteers that we have done some amazing things in this organization. Like that top picture, we actually have a dog park in Virginia Beach named after Dogs Unemployment, thanks to the chapter there. So how do we get back to this? How do we shift from this area of challenge into growth again, or not necessarily growth, I should say, but back to sustainment? Our true goal for 2024 is getting back to a level of sustainment and then reevaluating for 2025 to see where we can grow strategically. So one of the things that I'm really interested in putting effort on is reaching the vulnerable populations. Now, I will say, when we have a DoD border database of 46,000 volunteers, regardless of all of them are active or not, I have been thinking, how can we create strategy to get them more involved? Can we offer our services to other underserved and at-risk populations? Because again, Dogs Unemployment's vision is that no pet is needlessly surrendered to an animal shelter. So how can we use our foster network to help other underserved populations? We really are trying to work on our strengthening collaborations, not only with merchandising partners like Bowser Beer, but also with other community organizations. We have our partnership with the Spay Neuter Action Project here in San Diego, and we're also developing partnerships with other organizations such as the Helen Woodworth Animal Center, and Support the Enlisted project here. And so we're really trying to think, how can we get outside of just being Dogs Unemployment, but also being involved in the promotion of other nonprofits that have experienced other challenges? Helping Paws is here too. And so they're another local nonprofit that helps military and veterans receive financial assistance for emergency vet care, very similar to our Rich Setzer Memorial Fund. And you know, how do we work together? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who is receiving, or I'm sorry, how the money is getting to the person in need, but it's that person in need that is being helped. And that is a success for all people that are involved in helping that person. Really focusing back on our military and our community roots, be looking to open up those community chapters. As I said, we're looking at having them sold more as programs, vice just volunteer projects, because we want to have sustainment in a community presence. This next year, we're going to be focusing on our core programs, being the Pet Foster Network and how to engage our DoD border database, as well as financial assistance, but paring down mostly to pet transportation costs and our spay and neuter objectives, which means our emergency veterinary financial assistance program will be reduced because we only have so much funding allocated, and we want to make sure that we're helping where other organizations maybe aren't helping. So because we know we have partners out there like Helping Paws that provides financial assistance, we're looking to strengthen our other financial assistance programs that aren't being provided elsewhere. And really getting back into a grassroots efforts. Dogs Unemployment started as grassroots. We want to get back there. And so we'll be focusing on reestablishing a San Diego chapter as well as a Hampton Roads chapter. Okay, so this is the important part. How can you help? It's not just donating and it's not just volunteering. But when it comes to all of these ways that we can go, volunteering, pet fostering, obviously a great way, but it's not just you, it's who in your community, your neighbors, trying to activate them to sign up to be in our reserve of our DoD borders. So that way, if there is any kind of military crisis, we're able to respond. So if you're around a military base and you haven't spoken to your community about dogs in employment and encouraging people to sign up to board, that's a first place to start. We're also looking for event coordination, administrative support on our website. I have several volunteer postings about how people can get involved more with administrative work. And then also to put out there, we are seeking board nominations. We had a really strong board in 2019, very diverse with a lot of people from various industries. And many people had to step off, and our board is now at a place where we're looking to rebuild it, diversify it, and have people across various industries be involved in the sustainment and the relationship building of dogs in employment. Advocacy, we talked about the spreading awareness, submitting your testimonials, making sure that those testimonials are actually being seen by people is huge. So by sharing on your own personal pages, on your LinkedIn and social media, this is really beneficial for us as it leads to traffic. And then we don't have to pay for paid media, which I do not like to pay for advertising if I can help it. Also, energizing your employee networks. If you have a place of business, getting involved with volunteering as a company or getting together, doing some sort of presentation at your place of employment. We have Zach Wyman on here who actually invited me to come speak to his company when I was speaking about women in leadership, but I was using dogs on employment as the baseline for my leadership. And so even though my speech wasn't about dogs in employment, I've reached a lot of people in my mission just because of the way that I was presenting my speech. Collaborating and partnering. If you are in a company or if there's a company in your organization that you think might have some sort of collaborative ability, for example, here in San Diego, we have Soapy Joe's Car Wash, and they have these little air fresheners that you can put in your car. And they have a partnership right now with Helen Woodward Animal Center and STEP, where you can submit your picture, get a free air freshener, and then that company, Soapy Joe's, is donating back to those nonprofits. So that is a great way to create collaboration that is beneficial to all parties. But again, it's not just focused on money, money, money. We're not looking for that. The money will come to support this organization if we start first with community building. Engaging in fundraising. I also just want to point out corporate matching and company sponsorship. And oh gosh, there's another word, donor advised funds. There we go. Making sure, like, if your place of employment has any sort of corporate matching, corporate sponsorship, or employee volunteer network, or newsletters, or is involved in a donor match fund, make sure that they know about dogs in employment, and we'll help you get that information to them. Shared expertise. Again, volunteers, they come and go. Sometimes we have, well, for example, we'll have a webmaster, and then our webmaster will be with us for a few months, and then they're gone, and then our website doesn't get updated. And the ways that companies can support beyond just individual volunteers is providing in-kind services, in-kind accounting, in-kind tech support, in-kind, you name it. These are ways to look at the support for a nonprofit kind of in a different method in order to see if we can facilitate greater support for the cause. We're looking to really have a great events calendar in 2024, and it doesn't always have to be about dogs in employment. If you're creating an event for your own employment or your own business or your own community, think about how maybe you can advertise dogs in employment at that event, because again, it doesn't have to be dogs in employment being the focus, just like my speech. It can be the sneak attack that comes in. And finally, who's in your network that might be interested in supporting dogs in employment? Again, We're looking for board membership. We're looking for companies to provide in-kind services. We're looking for partners. And I don't know everybody in the world. And I rely on our supporters to say, hey, you know, I have this person in my network that I think might be interested in supporting your organization. For example, our general counsel had to leave our board of directors. So we're looking for another general counsel. Does anybody have a lawyer in their network that might be military background or nonprofit background that might be interested in supporting our organization? So I ask that we start to keep these things in the back of our mind, because if we look to creating a more engaged community, I know that we'll be able to create ultimate success in our programs. We will see more boarders signing up. We will see more pet owners being able to successfully place with our boarders. And as we grow our support, we are going to be able to hire people that can increase our capacity. So that way, when we surge, we can surge with our organization, because right now we can't surge. We are floundering, and we are asking to our community to please help us stay afloat. So that way we can get our feet back under the ground after these challenging 5 years, and put ourselves into a successful place in the future. So I did have a video, but I realized the way that this video is linked, it won't allow me to play it. So I'm going to stop sharing. This is a picture of Sean and I right when we started the organization. We were babies. So I just kind of wanted to tie it back. Okay. With that said, that concludes my presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I am going to go to participations, and I'm going to allow everyone to unmute. Okay, so Courtney, if you would like to unmute.
Yes.
Okay, hi. Also, I wanted to give Courtney a chance, since she is on here, to briefly introduce herself and what she does within the organization. And then I'd like to open it up to Q&A. If you would like to post your questions into the chat, Courtney and I will be looking at those, and I can answer any questions. So please, if you have any questions, post them in the chat and I can answer. We have about 15 more minutes.
Hi, so I'm Courtney. I'm the Executive Administrator and Customer Service Director for Dogs on Deployment. I basically do a little bit of everything. As far as the customer service side goes, I work with all of our service members, all of our boarders, and making sure that the connections are happening. If there's problems, they come to me, and it's my job to solve the problems. So that's kind of just a quick little overall. I will say on a boarder side, it's extremely important that we have our boarders. Otherwise, our service members, the things I hear from them is, well, I leave in 3 days. I still haven't found a boarder, so I guess I'm taking my dog to the shelter. No. That's not how that's working. That's not what we're doing. I will post on social media. We will do a press release in your area to find a boarder. We will figure out a way to make it happen. We recently, it wasn't for deployment, it was for a PCS. It was for 3 pits. They were PCSing to a country that pit bulls are banned. And if they would have even have tried to bring their dogs over there, they would have been killed immediately. So they were trying to find a home for them here temporarily until they could figure out what the next steps were. They were down to literally the last 24 hours. I worked with them for 2 weeks straight. I emailed every inactive boarder and active boarder in their area within 100 miles to try to find somebody for them. And literally 12 hours before their flight, we ended up finding a boarder that took all 3 together. So those are kind of the things that I do on my end. Is it just doesn't stop of, okay, well, there's nobody, so there's nothing we can do. No, we're going to find a way to find a boarder and make it work, and go from there. And if you have to think outside the box, you have to think outside the box. I know we have several boarders on here. Chris was just one who was just speaking with us, and her comment was, I don't know if you remember, but there was this guy and his 2 dogs. And I said, I know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about Mr. Eric. And, like even though it wasn't this year, I remember it because it was something that it was a different situation. We had to really work hard to get it to work. We had a great boarder like Chris who stood up and, took the dogs and, everything worked out in that sense. But it wasn't an easy thing of just let's deploy my pet in the back end of the system and call it a day. There was a lot of work involved with it. But those are the things that I cherish the most. And those are the things that I like the most, is that I can sit here and help make those things happen. I know Elisa has this reunion running. And I have to laugh because I do know this family. They've actually used us before a couple times in boarding. And yeah, it's moments like you see in these videos with the reunions. And that's things that we tell our boarders, capture those reunions. That service member does not have a phone on him to sit here and video his pet, but those are things that they would enjoy to keep and have. And those are things that we want to share as well. So if you guys have reunion videos, we want to see those. We want to post them. We want to share them.
Okay. That's great. Courtney, we have this question from Jilly. Seems whenever I see a dog needing boarding, they need help that next day. What is happening when the day comes and goes? Is there still a chance to reach out after the date? And I think that's a really poignant question in reminding how we handle our boarding dates and not necessarily our deployment dates because of offset concerns. If you want to take that.
Sure. So just because there's a start and end date, that's not an exact date. That's tentative dates that are given by the command when they sign up with us. We can never give exact dates to anybody due to operational security measures. So those are just the tentative dates. I always tell people if it's a week or 2 after and it's still sitting on there, then please reach out to them. It can't hurt, or reach out to myself and say, hey, I haven't heard from them, but did they find boarding, or maybe they're in transition, for that deployment and they aren't able to always email back to you guys right away, but I might have heard from them. We're always willing to help out, but the boarding dates are all tentative dates, just like the end dates, especially right now with what's going on in the world. The end dates, our boarders need to be a little flexible. If they can't, then just let me know. If you have a dog and your end date was extended by your service member, we will find another boarder in the area to take that dog while that service member is finishing his commitment. It's not their fault that their ship gets sent somewhere else and they have no end date now. Like, those are situations that we do run into, unfortunately, with military. We have to take it as it comes, but that's us. Come to us if you have that issue of, a service member got extended. I don't know how long, but I can't watch his dog. I have a vacation to Italy for 3 weeks. What do? Reach out to me. We'll work on trying to find a different boarder, in the meantime, for that time period or for the remainder of his deployment.
And another thing I'd like to point out as something in the past that we have tried to stand up as a program, but again, it's a lack of capacity to be able to execute. But on our 5-year plan is to have partnerships with physical boarding facilities to offer at least 1 kennel space for dogs on deployment. So that way we do have a professional facility that's available, that if a deployment is longer than expected, we have this backup plan. So keep that in mind too, as you take your own pet to boarding. Is your boarding facility interested in working for dogs on deployment? We had another question from Kish. Have you ever presented at Nellis Air Force Base? I have helped a soldier place 2 dogs through Dogs on Deployment. Awesome. With the help from the spouses Facebook group at Nellis, with tons of people that wanted to help. I love to hear this. What I will say about Nellis specifically is we did have a coordinator in that area, and I want to say she officially stepped down somewhere around 2018, and we were not able to backfill her position. So no, not recently. And I also want to remind everybody that when it comes to deployment briefs or briefs on military bases or connection with military commands, generally you're only in a position 1 to 2 years in the military, and then you rotate out and there's an entire new leadership that comes. So there is no consistency, which is why when I say having a full-time community coordinator is imperative, because if we have somebody that goes to Nellis and does a presentation in January 2024, by July 2024, you have all new people, and that information that we presented is likely gone. So, and also I want to take note on the spouse organization. Such great ways to help us activate our network. We do apply for spouse grants every year. That actually was one of our biggest ways that we initially started fundraising. Unfortunately, again, because of pandemic causes, we've seen a lot less support from military spouse groups in terms of fiscal sponsorship. But connecting with them consistently at a local level, putting a face to, a representative Dogs Employment into the group is a huge way to help get our information out there. Courtney, did you have anything to add to that before I go to the next question?
So during the pandemic, there was a few that even towards the end of it did virtual pre-deployment briefs, and Linda, who assists me on doing like the customer service side, we actually had teamed up and we've done quite a few virtual pre-deployment briefs. I did one for Nellis. It's been about a year, but we did one for Nellis, and then they do have a lot of our rack cards that are floating around the base as well. I know that there is another pre-deployment brief that is due to come up soon there. It will not be virtual, but I'm working on them right now with trying to see if we can, as Dogs in Employment, can get a virtual aspect for that.
Thank you for that. Jennifer asked, do you have any corporate sponsorships from Amazon? I want to laugh because I wish, but no. And they got rid of their Amazon Smile, which I mentioned earlier. We were receiving maybe $5,000 to $8,000 from Amazon Smile. And when you think that it was only a 0.5% that was being donated to the organization, that is insane. I don't know what our supporters are buying on Amazon, but we're no longer seeing any of that. So in terms of corporate sponsorships, I will be extremely frank that we don't have anything except for our partnership with the Tractor Supply Foundation. Again, many of our corporate sponsorships pulled back their philanthropic and their giving after the pandemic. And, this is also something I really seek from my community is how is the right way to address corporate sponsorships given Dogs in Employment's kind of unique mission and what we're asking, because again, the template of saying like sponsor Dogs in Employment for $10,000 and receive these benefits. One, it's not interesting anymore to companies. Two, it is extremely difficult for Dogs in Employment to execute. When we make promises to a company, it is like, and they don't even want half the things that we promise them, it becomes really challenging. And we end up using our resources, which is time, into supporting benefits that aren't actually making impact. So we're really looking at rethinking how we are doing our corporate sponsorships. So that way there's a lot more value being added both to Dogs in Employment and the sponsor. And then Jarrett asks, how far does Dogs in Employment scope? I asked because you are fairly new. Yes, he is helping us write some articles that we're going to be publishing soon. I work for a remote company in Florida with a boss who might appreciate your mission or our mission statement. And then, yes, so, and were you talking about scope in terms of like our long-term planning, or scope in terms of geographic?
Geographic scope.
Okay, national. Yep. And, when I started this organization in 2011, I thought to myself, like, I can't be local. Like, this is a national problem. I need to be everywhere. Every single person I have ever told that I made that decision that comes from a business background looks at me like I'm absolutely crazy, because usually you start local and then you move up, but I did it the opposite direction. And I do think that that has a lot of testament to how Dogs in Employment did grow so quickly, but also a testament to why going forward, we're really going to be concentrating on having a local presence. And we're focusing specifically in areas highly impacted by military and veteran communities, such as San Diego, Hampton Roads, States. We have a few other areas within the country that we will be concentrating on rebuilding. But we are national, to answer your question, but we do have focus near military towns. Okay, do I have any other questions? We have about 5 minutes left. So if we do, I will continue to answer, or we can end the call.
So I think while we're waiting to see if there's any more questions, Elisa, Chris, one of our boarders who's on here, she had asked a question at the beginning that nobody really got to like hear. So I wanted to just maybe mention that, and that was, what happens at the end of the deployment as far as like, where does things go? So the service member deploys their pet. They have now given their pet to our boarder. Then they come home and do their reunion. And then what? Like, is there a closure? Is there something on the system that says, hey, the pet's been reunited, here's the testimonial or a survey from the service member about how the boarder was, etc. Those are things that we are currently implementing and trying to figure out, because you're absolutely right, Chris. It stops, the reunion happened, and then that's it. There's no finalized closure. And we are working on that. That is something that Elisa and I have been speaking on, and hopefully in 2024 we'll have kind of a better closure and to that for our boarders, because I think it helps them out, and it also makes you guys feel more valued, that it wasn't just, okay, reunion's here, nobody cares now. We care, we hear you, and we are definitely, that's one of the things on our list for our boarding program.
I will point out, though, that in order to make those changes, it takes somebody that has experience with product development and user experience of mobile and web applications. In the past, I was the product owner for Dogs in Employment, meaning I was responsible for building our site as you see it. I did all the framework, I did all the mock-ups, I did all the back end, relationships of when you click here, this is what happens in terms of actions, and our programmers built our website. It is 100% custom coded. With that said, in order to improve that post-deployment procedure, I need help. I need somebody that can go through my registration process and say, hey, these are the places that as a user, I'm having challenges, and make recommendations to our programmers to be able to make those implementations. Our programmers do not do that for us. We have to provide the feedback that then they implement. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm going to go ahead and answer these other 2 questions. Zach asked if I'm doing any more speaking engagements. Absolutely. I will come speak to anybody anywhere. So if you want me to come speak for anything, because you like to hear me talk, I will come speak. And I have done several motivational speaks about leadership, about being a woman in the military, about diversity and those challenges associated with it, not just nonprofit management or Dogs in Employment, but I always do put that in. I actually will be doing a podcast with the nonprofit or the charity CFO on a podcast called The Modern Nonprofit, which I will be sharing with everybody. So I am excited to have those opportunities. And again, another way that you can help support, contact local media, contact your favorite podcaster, contact whoever and say, hey, there's a story out there. Would you like to cover it? I love Karen shares that she's remained friends with the service member after she ported her pet for 3 weeks. We love to hear stories with that. Real quick, we had a pet owner that had their pet deployed to a DoD boarder, and the pet owner ended up marrying the roommate of the DoD boarder. One of the most fun stories ever. So we are a matchmaker. And then Jarrett also asked, how about platforms such as Twitch, YouTube, live stream for speaking engagements? Would absolutely love to be more involved in those kinds of things. Again, this is a capacity thing. I'm not familiar with Twitch. I'm not familiar with YouTube. I don't know how to do video editing. I need support in providing those projects so that we can actually get our stuff shared. You share a reunion video with us, that requires a volunteer to sit there on their phone or computer, create a video from it, brand it, schedule it, research what the caption is going to be, how are they going to, who are they going to tag and all that. And that takes time. And that's where we're saying we're at capacity. we need to increase our capacity by bringing more people into our community that are willing to provide services. And I love that. Let's do that then. Okay, we are at time, so I'm going to close this call. From the bottom of my heart, thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you found this session to be informational and beneficial for your understanding of dogs in employment and giving you some ideas of how you can be a part of the solutions here. I am always available. If you look at my signature link, I have a link there that says schedule a call with me. Always open. That calendar is always open. So never feel like you don't have access to me. Courtney is the same way. So with that, thank you all very much. I will be sending out this recording to our followers, and we will be doing this on a quarterly basis. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
You.